No one enters human space. Uninvited. Unless they don't plan to come back, Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the large viewing window. His purple skin gleamed under the soft blue lights of the Zephyrian command center. Behind him, dozens of his crew worked at their stations, preparing for what would be another easy conquest. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for over 300 years. They had conquered 47 different species, taking their worlds and resources. Each victory had been simple. Most species surrendered when they saw the size of the Zephyrian fleet. Those who fought back were quickly crushed by superior technology and weapons. "Admiral," called his science officer Veltar, "we are approaching the target system. Long-range scans confirm the intelligence reports." Kethvar nodded and walked to the tactical display. The hologram showed a simple solar system with one yellow star and several planets. The third planet from the star showed signs of a civilization that called itself humanity. "How primitive are they?" Kethvar asked. "Very primitive, sir," Veltar replied, checking his instruments. "They have only colonized 4 worlds in their system. Their ships appear to use basic fusion drives. No energy shields detected. No advanced weapons signatures." Kethvar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. This would be even easier than their last conquest. The humans had barely left their homeworld, while the Zephyrians controlled hundreds of star systems. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Our estimates show maybe 200 vessels total," Veltar said. "Most appear to be cargo ships or small patrol craft. We count perhaps 30 ships that might be warships, but they are tiny compared to our battle cruisers." Kethvar looked at his own fleet. 12 massive ships, each one larger than anything the humans had ever built. His flagship alone carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. The other ships in his fleet were equally powerful. This would not be a battle. It would be a demonstration. "Sir," his communications officer spoke up, "we are receiving some kind of transmission from the edge of the system." "Put it on the main screen," Kethvar ordered. A simple message appeared in text form. It was repeated in several different languages, but the meaning was clear. "Human space. Authorized personnel only. Lethal force authorized." The bridge crew laughed. Kethvar shook his head in amusement. These humans actually thought they could threaten the mighty Zephyrian Empire. "Sir, there are warning beacons throughout the system," the sensor officer reported. "They all broadcast the same message." "Ignore them," Kethvar commanded. "Continue to the third planet. We will make contact with their government and demand their surrender." As the Zephyrian fleet moved deeper into the human system, something strange happened. Instead of panic or desperate attempts to contact them, the humans began what looked like organized evacuation procedures. "Admiral," Veltar said, sounding confused, "the humans are not trying to communicate with us. They are moving their civilian populations away from major cities and space stations." "Maybe they plan to hide," suggested the weapons officer. "Some species try to save their people before surrendering." But Kethvar frowned. Something felt wrong. The human response was too organized, too quick. It was as if they had practiced this exact scenario many times before. "Sir, I am detecting increased energy signatures from what we thought were mining stations," the sensor officer reported. "And there are ships moving from hidden positions behind asteroids and moons." On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing. Ships that had been hidden or powered down were now coming online. But they were still small compared to the Zephyrian vessels. "How many ships do we count now?" Kethvar asked. "Still less than 100 active warships, sir." "But—" The sensor officer paused. "Some of these energy readings are strange. I cannot identify the power source." Kethvar dismissed the concern. Whatever primitive technology the humans used, it could not match Zephyrian engineering. He had seen this pattern before. Desperate species sometimes had secret weapons or hidden fleets. It never made a difference in the end. "Open a channel to the human government," he ordered. After a few minutes, a human face appeared on the screen. It was a woman with short gray hair and cold blue eyes. She wore some kind of military uniform with symbols that meant nothing to the Zephyrians. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force," the woman said. Her voice was calm and steady. You have entered human space without permission. Kethvar stood tall and proud. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species will surrender immediately. Prepare to be incorporated into our empire. Resistance will only cause unnecessary death. Admiral Chen stared at him for a long moment. Her expression did not change. You were warned at the system boundary. Our beacons clearly stated that lethal force is authorized against unauthorized entry. Your threats are meaningless, Kethvar replied. Look at your ships compared to ours. You cannot win. Surrender now, and your people will be treated well as subjects of the Empire. I see, Admiral Chen said. You have made your choice. You have 36 hours to leave our space. We strongly advise you to take this opportunity. Kethvar laughed loudly. 36 hours? You give us an ultimatum? Your entire fleet could not damage one of our ships. That remains to be seen, Admiral Chen replied. This is your final warning. The communication ended. The Zephyrian bridge crew laughed and made jokes about human arrogance, but Kethvar noticed something that bothered him. The human admiral had not seemed afraid. She had not begged or tried to negotiate. She had been calm, almost bored, sir, Veltar said, studying his sensors more carefully. I am getting some very unusual readings from those human installations. The energy patterns do not match anything in our database. What kind of energy patterns? Kethvar asked. I am not sure, sir. The power levels are much higher than they should be for such small installations. And there are some kind of field generators that I cannot identify. Kethvar walked to the sensor station and looked at the data himself. The readings were indeed strange, but he had seen unusual alien technology before. It never mattered. Zephyrian ships had the strongest shields and most powerful weapons in the galaxy. Sir, the communications officer said, I am picking up human military transmissions. They are using some kind of code, but I can make out a few phrases. What are they saying? They keep mentioning something called Contingency Omega and Darwin Protocol. I do not know what these mean. Kethvar shrugged. Probably just human military code names for their defense plans. Every species had dramatic names for their strategies. It did not make them effective. Maintain course, he ordered. We will give them 12 hours to reconsider. If they do not surrender by then, we will demonstrate the power of Zephyrian weapons. Target their largest city for a warning shot. But as the hours passed, Kethvar found himself more and more uneasy. The humans continued their evacuations with perfect organization. More strange energy readings appeared throughout the system. And most disturbing of all, the humans seemed completely unafraid. In his experience, primitive species reacted to overwhelming force in predictable ways. They panicked, they begged, they tried desperate last-minute negotiations. The humans were doing none of these things. They were simply preparing. Preparing for what? Kethvar wondered. What could they possibly do against the might of the Zephyrian Empire? He would find out soon enough. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth. Around her, hundreds of technicians and officers worked at their stations. Large screens showed the positions of every ship in the solar system, both human and alien. Status report, she said calmly. Civilian evacuation is 92% complete, reported Colonel Martinez. All major population centers have been cleared. Essential personnel are moving to hardened shelters. Military readiness? All defense platforms are online and ready. Deep space squadrons have taken positions. The outer ring stations are fully powered. Chen nodded. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The same plan they had practiced hundreds of times over the past century. The same plan that had kept humanity alive since they first reached the stars. Admiral, her communications officer said, the Zephyrian fleet is maintaining position near Jupiter. They appear to be studying our installations. Let them study, Chen replied. Have they attempted to land on any of our worlds? No, ma'am. They seem to be waiting for our response to their surrender demand. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The aliens were following a predictable pattern. Overwhelming show of force, demand for surrender, then destruction when refused. She had seen this behavior described in the classified files, the files that detailed humanity's encounters with 17 other aggressive species over the past 100 years. The public knew about some of those encounters. They knew that humanity had fought wars against alien invaders. What they did not know was how those wars had ended. What they did not know was why no alien species had threatened Earth in over 50 years. "Ma'am," said her intelligence officer, Commander Park, "we have completed analysis of the Zephyrian fleet. 12 heavy cruisers, approximately 2 kilometers long each. Plasma-based weapons, magnetic field shields, fusion power systems. Standard aggressive expansion configuration," Chen noted. "What about their empire?" "Intelligence estimates they control approximately 300 star systems. They appear to follow a pattern of conquest and resource extraction. 47 known species have been subjugated." Chen studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian ships were impressive by most standards, large, heavily armed, protected by powerful shields. Against most species, they would be unstoppable. But humans were not most species. Admiral, her science advisor, Dr. Reeves, approached with a tablet. "We have confirmed the Zephyrian technology base. Their weapons and defenses are approximately where we estimated. No unexpected surprises? Good. And our own systems? All platforms are operating within normal parameters. Quantum resonance fields are stable. The Darwin batteries are charged and ready." Chen looked at the main display again. The Zephyrian ships hung in space like metal predators, waiting to strike. Their crews probably felt confident, even bored. After all, they had conquered dozens of species. Why should humanity be different? "Ma'am," the communications officer said, "we are receiving another transmission from the alien admiral." "Put him through." The familiar purple face of Admiral Kethvar appeared on the screen. This time he looked less amused and more impatient. "Admiral Chen," he said, "your time is running out. We have given you more consideration than most species receive. Surrender now, or we will be forced to demonstrate our superiority." Chen looked at him with the same calm expression she had worn during their first conversation. "Admiral Kethvar, you still have time to leave our space. Our offer remains open." "Your offer?" Kethvar's voice rose. "You are in no position to make offers. We have scanned your defenses. Your ships are tiny. Your weapons are primitive. What could you possibly do against us?" "That depends," Chen replied, "on whether you choose to find out." "Enough games!" Kethvar snapped. "You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. After that, we will target your largest city as a demonstration. Perhaps that will convince you to be reasonable." The transmission ended. Chen turned to her staff. "Hour," she announced. "Final preparations. Activate Contingency Omega." Throughout the command center, officers began entering codes into their terminals. On the main display, status indicators changed from yellow to red. Deep in space, systems that had been dormant for decades began to come online. "Ma'am," Dr. Reeves said quietly, "are you certain about this? Once we activate the Darwin Protocol, there is no going back." Chen looked at him steadily. "Doctor, they have conquered 47 species. They came here planning to make us number 48. They were warned and chose to ignore those warnings. The protocol exists for exactly this situation. But their entire civilization made the choice to be a threat to all sapient life," Chen finished. "The Darwin Protocol is not revenge, Doctor. It is surgical removal of a cancer before it spreads further. Around the solar system, human installations that had appeared to be simple mining stations or research outposts began to transform. Sections of asteroids folded away to reveal massive weapons arrays. Ships that had seemed small and harmless suddenly displayed their true size as camouflage fields dropped away. In the asteroid belt, Station Omega-7 had appeared to be a routine ore processing facility. Now it revealed itself as a fortress the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that no alien species had ever seen. "Admiral," Commander Park reported, "all outer ring stations report ready. Deep strike squadrons are in position. The Darwin platforms are online." Chen nodded. "Signal all stations. If the Zephyrians fire on any human installation or world, they have triggered the protocol. Rules of engagement are complete elimination of threat capability." "Yes, ma'am." Chen walked to the large viewing screen that showed Earth's surface. Cities that had been bustling with activity just hours ago were now empty. Millions of people were safe in shelters that could withstand anything the Zephyrians might throw at them, because humanity had learned over the past century that there were species in the galaxy that could not be reasoned with or deterred, species that understood only strength and viewed mercy as weakness. Ma'am, the sensor operator called out. The Zephyrian fleet is moving. They are heading toward Earth. Let them come, Chen said softly. Time to show them why we put up those warning signs. On the main tactical display, the 12 Zephyrian ships began accelerating toward Earth. Their weapons were charging, their shields at maximum power. Admiral Kethvar was about to teach these primitive humans a lesson about the realities of galactic power. What he did not know was that humanity had already learned that lesson. They had learned it from 17 other species who had made the same mistake the Zephyrians were about to make. All stations report ready, Commander Park announced. Darwin Protocol is authorized, Chen replied. May God forgive us for what we are about to do. But even as she spoke the words, Chen felt no doubt. The Zephyrians had chosen this path when they decided to become predators. Humanity had tried to warn them away. Now they would learn why the warning signs around human space were not threats, they were promises. Admiral Kethvar watched the tactical display as his fleet approached the third planet. The human world called Earth grew larger on the screen. Soon, he would fire a single shot at their largest city, and these stubborn primitives would understand their situation. Admiral, his weapons officer reported, we are in range of the planet. Plasma cannons are charged and ready. Target their largest population center, Kethvar ordered. One shot. That should be enough to convince them. Sir, the sensor officer interrupted. I am detecting some unusual activity from those mining stations in the asteroid belt. Kethvar glanced at the readings, then dismissed them. Probably trying to hide their ore reserves. Fire the warning shot. The main plasma cannon of his flagship charged with deadly energy. A beam of superheated matter that could melt through a mountain was about to strike the human planet. It would show these creatures the futility of resistance. But as the weapon fired, something impossible happened. A barrier of pure energy appeared in front of Earth. The plasma beam struck it and simply disappeared. Not deflected, not absorbed. It was as if the attack had never existed. What just happened? Kethvar demanded. Sir, I don't know, his weapons officer stammered. The shot should have struck the planet, but it's gone. Some kind of shield technology. No, sir. This is different. It's like the energy was converted into something else entirely. On the sensor displays, the mining stations in the asteroid belt were changing. What had looked like simple industrial facilities were unfolding into something else entirely. Massive weapons arrays emerged from hidden compartments. Ships that had appeared tiny revealed their true size as holographic camouflage fell away. By the void, Veltar whispered. Those aren't mining stations. They're fortresses. The largest of the installations was the size of a small moon. Its surface was covered with weapons that the Zephyrian computers could not identify. Energy readings were off the scale. Sir, the communications officer said, we are receiving a transmission from the human admiral. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. Her expression was sadder now, but still completely calm. Admiral Kethvar, she said, you have fired upon a human world. You have triggered our Darwin Protocol. I am sorry it has come to this. What is the Darwin Protocol? Kethvar demanded. What are those weapons? The Darwin Protocol, Chen explained, is based on a simple principle. Any species aggressive enough to attack our space without provocation has demonstrated that they are too dangerous to be allowed to continue existing. You have proven that your civilization represents a threat to all sapient life. You cannot be serious, Kethvar said. We have 12 capital ships. We are the Zephyrian Empire. You are nothing. We are humanity, Chen replied. And we have been preparing for species like yours for a very long time. The transmission ended. Immediately, every human installation in the system opened fire. But these were not the primitive weapons Kethvar had expected. Beams of coherent energy struck his ships, and the Zephyrian shields simply failed. Not overwhelmed, they stopped working entirely, as if the fundamental forces that powered them had been turned off. Shields are down, his defense officer shouted. All shield generators have failed simultaneously. How is that possible? I don't know, sir. It's like the quantum fields that create our shields have been disrupted at the subatomic level. The human weapons continued their assault. Kethvar watched in horror as one of his escort ships began to come apart. Not destroyed by explosions or fire, but literally disassembled. Metal separated from metal. Circuits unwound themselves. The ship fell apart, as if every molecular bond holding it together had been severed. "Evasive maneuvers!" he screamed. "Return fire!" His fleet scattered, trying to avoid the human weapons. But the beams followed them with perfect accuracy. Another ship began disintegrating, its crew ejecting in escape pods just before their vessel dissolved into component atoms. "Sir," Veltar reported, his voice shaking, "their weapons appear to work at the molecular level. They are breaking apart the atomic bonds in our hull materials." "That's impossible. No species has that technology." "Apparently humans do, sir. On the display, more human ships were appearing. These were not the small patrol craft the Zephyrians had detected earlier. These were warships the size of cities, emerging from behind gas giant moons where they had been hidden. Their hulls were sleek and black, covered with weapons that seemed to bend light around them. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "I count 30. No, 50. Sir, there are over 100 human warships converging on our position." "Where did they come from?" Kethvar demanded. "They were hidden, sir. Powered down, camouflaged. Our sensors couldn't detect them. The largest human ship, a massive dreadnought 3 times the size of Kethvar's flagship, took position directly in front of the Zephyrian fleet. Its weapons began charging with energy that made space itself shimmer. "Sir," his communications officer said urgently, "Admiral Chen is hailing us again." Chen's face appeared on the screen. Behind her, Kethvar could see human officers working, calmly at their stations, as if the total destruction of an interstellar empire was routine business. "Admiral," she said, "you have one opportunity to save some of your people. Order your ships to surrender immediately. We will allow your crews to evacuate in their escape pods." "Surrender?" Kethvar was incredulous. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not surrender to primitives." "Very well," Chen said. "Then you will serve as an example to other aggressive species. This is what happens when you ignore our warnings." The human dreadnought fired. The beam that struck Kethvar's flagship was unlike anything he had ever seen. It did not burn through his armor or overload his systems. Instead, it seemed to reach into the very structure of matter itself. The ship began falling apart around him, every rivet and weld coming undone simultaneously. "Abandon ship!" he screamed. "All hands abandon ship!" As his crew fled to the escape pods, Kethvar saw the rest of his fleet suffering the same fate. 12 mighty warships, the pride of the Zephyrian Empire, were being taken apart piece by weapons that operated beyond their understanding. But the humans were not content with simply destroying the ships. As each vessel came apart, small human craft moved in to attach strange devices to the hull fragments. Tracking beacons, Kethvar realized with growing horror. "Sir," Veltar shouted from his escape pod, "they are attaching tracers to our ship." "Debris! Why would they want to track wreckage?" Then Kethvar understood. The tracers were not for the wreckage. They were for any ships that tried to flee back to Zephyrian space. The humans planned to follow them home. "This is impossible," he whispered, as his own escape pod launched from the dying flagship. "They are primitives! How do they have this technology?" Through the small viewport of his pod, he watched the human fleet. Massive ships moved with precision and purpose. Their weapons continued firing, not just at the Zephyrian vessels, but at the escape pods that tried to flee the system. Any pod that tried to jump to hyperspace was disabled by some kind of field that prevented faster-than-light travel. The humans were systematically capturing or destroying everything, ensuring that no one could escape to warn the Empire. But a few pods, including Kethvar's, seemed to be deliberately ignored by the human weapons. As he watched, he realized why. These pods had been tagged by the human tracking devices. The humans were allowing them to escape. "They want us to go home," he said to himself. "They want us to lead them back to our worlds." As his pod finally managed to jump to hyperspace, Kethvar looked back at the human solar system. Where his mighty fleet had once threatened a primitive species, now only human ships remained. Patient, silent, and utterly deadly. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn what happened when you ignored warnings from humanity, and Kethvar was going to be the one to deliver that lesson. Behind him, invisible to his sensors, human ships began following the tracker signals home. 3 days after the disaster in human space, Admiral Kethvar stood before the Zephyrian High Council on the imperial capital world of Zephyr Prime. The massive chamber was filled with the Empire's most powerful leaders, their purple faces showing expressions of disbelief and anger. "You lost an entire fleet," Supreme Commander Thexnal stated coldly. 12 capital ships destroyed by primitives. "They are not primitives," Kethvar replied, his voice still shaking from what he had witnessed. "Their technology is beyond anything we have encountered. Their weapons can disassemble matter at the molecular level." "Impossible," declared Science Counselor Mevtar. "No species has developed such weapons. You must have encountered some kind of natural phenomenon." Kethvar activated a holographic display showing his ship's sensor records from the battle. The Council watched in silence as Zephyrian warships simply came apart, their hulls dissolving like smoke. "This is what their weapons do," he said, "and that was not their full fleet. Our intelligence was completely wrong. They have hundreds of warships, not dozens, all hidden, all waiting." "Even if this is true," Supreme Commander Thexnal said, "they are confined to one star system. We control 300 systems. We can gather a fleet of thousands of ships." "Sir," Kethvar said urgently, "that would be a mistake. These humans, they are not like other species we have conquered. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight to eliminate threats." "What does that mean?" "It means," a new voice said from the chamber entrance, "that we are already dead." Everyone turned to see Intelligence Director Yethfor entering the chamber. His face was pale, and he carried a data tablet with information that made his hands shake. "Director," Thexnal said, "what is the meaning of this interruption?" "Sir, we have a problem. A very serious problem." Yethfor activated the chamber's main display. 3 hours ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected unidentified ships entering Imperial space. "Where?" "Everywhere, sir. 67 systems have reported unknown contacts. The ships appear suddenly, as if they have stealth technology we cannot detect." Kethvar felt ice in his veins. "How many ships?" "We are not certain. The contacts appear and disappear. But preliminary estimates suggest at least 300 vessels have entered our territory." 300 ships? Thexnal stood from his throne. "How is that possible? The humans cannot have that many ships." "Sir," Yethvor continued, "these are not the same ships that destroyed Admiral Kethvar's fleet. These vessels are larger, designed for long-range operations, and they are not exploring or scouting." "What are they doing?" "They are systematically destroying our infrastructure, communication relays, supply depots, shipyards. They are not targeting our planets yet, but they are cutting our ability to coordinate a defense." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Council members demanded action, threatened retaliation, called for the mobilization of the entire Imperial fleet. But Kethvar sat quietly, remembering Admiral Chen's calm voice and cold eyes. "Sir," he said, standing up, his voice cut through the noise, "I know these humans. This is not a raid or a punishment. This is extermination." "What are you talking about?" Thexnal demanded. "They called it the Darwin Protocol. Any species that attacks them has proven they are too dangerous to exist. They are not here to defeat us. They are here to end us." Intelligence Director Yethvor nodded grimly. "Admiral Kethvar is correct. We have been monitoring human communications. They refer to our empire as a species-level threat that must be resolved permanently." "This is madness," Science Counselor Mevtar protested. "No species can destroy an entire interstellar empire. We have billions of citizens across hundreds of worlds." "Sir," Yethvor said quietly, "I have been reviewing classified files. Over the past century, 17 aggressive species have disappeared from the galaxy. Civilizations that were expanding and conquering other worlds. One day they were there, the next day they were gone." "Gone how?" "Reduced to pre-industrial technology. Their populations relocated to single worlds under constant monitoring, their star-faring capability completely eliminated." The chamber fell silent. Kethvar felt a chill as he realized the implications. "The humans have done this before," he whispered. 17 times. "That is impossible," Thexnal said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We would have known. The galaxy would have known." "Would we?" Yethvor asked. "The humans are very quiet about their activities. They do not boast or claim territory. They simply remove threats. and then they make sure no one remembers those threats ever existed. On the main display, red indicators began appearing across the Empire. System after system was going dark as communication networks were severed. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we are losing contact with the outer territories. Something is jamming our long-range transmissions." "The fleet," Thexnol ordered. "Mobilize every ship we have. We will show these humans the true power of the Zephyrian Empire." "Sir," Kethvar said desperately, "you do not understand. They want us to gather our fleet. It makes us easier to destroy." But Thexnol was not listening. Orders went out across the Empire. Every available warship was to converge on the capital system for a massive counterattack against the human invaders. 3 days later, the Zephyrian fleet assembled in the space around their home world. 2,000 warships, the largest military force in the galaxy. Surely nothing could stand against such power. The humans attacked at dawn. They came from hyperspace in perfect formation, their black ships appearing like ghosts in the darkness. But these were not the same vessels that had fought at Earth. These ships were larger, sleeker, covered with weapons that seemed to bend reality around them. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with everything they had: plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion missiles. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds struck the human formation. The humans barely noticed. Their shields, if they could be called shields, simply absorbed the energy and converted it into something else. The human ships continued their advance, completely unharmed. Then they fired back. What happened next was not a battle. It was systematic demolition. Human weapons reached out across impossible distances and began taking apart Zephyrian ships piece by piece. But this time, they were not content with simple destruction. The human weapons could apparently be adjusted. Some ships were disassembled completely. Others had their weapons and engines removed, but their life support left intact. The humans were sorting the fleet, deciding which ships to destroy and which to capture. "Surrender." Admiral Chen's voice came over every communication channel. "Surrender now and your crews will be spared." Supreme Commander Thexnol, commanding from his flagship, refused to listen. "All ships, continue firing. We are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not surrender." The human response was immediate. Thexnol's flagship began coming apart, starting with the bridge. The Supreme Commander and his staff had just enough time to realize their mistake before the ship dissolved around them. Across the fleet, Zephyrian commanders began ordering their crews to abandon ship. Some tried to escape in smaller vessels. Others activated their ship's self-destruct systems rather than let the humans capture them. It made no difference. The humans had come prepared for every possibility. When the battle ended, the Zephyrian Empire's fleet no longer existed. 2,000 warships had been reduced to scattered debris and captured hulks. The humans had lost no ships and suffered no casualties. But they were not finished. As Kethvar watched from his escape pod, human, ships began landing on Zephyr Prime. Not conquering armies, but technical teams. They were here to dismantle the Empire's industrial capacity to ensure that the Zephyrians could never build another fleet. The proud Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled hundreds of worlds for 3 centuries, had lasted exactly 1 week against humanity. And now Kethvar understood the truth. The humans were not conquerors. They were gardeners, pruning away species that had become too dangerous for the galaxy's health. His empire had become a weed, and weeds the humans had decided needed to be removed. 6 months after the fall of the Zephyrian Empire, Admiral Kethvar stood in a simple farming field on the world of New Zephyr. The grass was green, the air was clean, and the technology level was roughly equivalent to what his species had possessed 500 years ago. He was no longer an admiral. There was no Zephyrian military anymore, no ships, no weapons, no star-spanning empire. Just this one world, carefully monitored by human observers who ensured that his people could live in peace but never again threaten anyone else. "Kethvar," a familiar voice called. He turned to see Admiral Sarah Chen approaching across the field. She wore simple civilian clothes now, but he would never forget that calm, cold voice that had announced his empire's destruction. "Admiral Chen," he said, bowing slightly, "I did not expect to see you here." "I wanted to check on your people's progress," she replied. "How are you adapting to your new life?" Kethvar looked around at the peaceful farming community. Former soldiers and scientists worked side by side, growing food and building simple homes. Children played in the gardens, laughing and happy. "We are surviving," he said. "But I must ask, why did you spare us? Your Darwin Protocol calls for the elimination of aggressive species." Chen sat down on a fallen log and gestured for him to join her. "The Darwin Protocol eliminates the ability to be aggressive on a galactic scale. Your people are not evil, Kethvar. You were simply part of a system that rewarded conquest and expansion. Remove that system, and you become peaceful farmers and artists. But our empire, our technology, our ships, all destroyed or confiscated," Chen confirmed. "Your industrial capacity has been reduced to what you need for a comfortable life on this world. You will never again have the ability to build warships or travel to other star systems." Kethvar was quiet for a moment. "How many other species have you done this to?" 18, including yours," Chen replied matter-of-factly. 18 civilizations that decided conquest was preferable to cooperation. And the galaxy accepts this? Other species allow you to destroy entire empires? Chen smiled sadly. "Most species in the galaxy are peaceful, Kethvar. They explore, they trade, they create art and science. They have no desire to conquer their neighbors. When aggressive species like yours appear, they threaten everyone." She stood up and walked to a small stream that ran through the field. "The peaceful species are grateful that someone is willing to do what they cannot. They lack the technology and the will to stop empires like yours, so they quietly support our actions." "You are the galaxy's police force?" "More like the galaxy's immune system," Chen corrected. "We identify threats to sapient life and remove them, not out of hatred or anger, but out of necessity." Kethvar joined her by the stream. "But why you? Why are humans the ones who do this?" Chen was quiet for a long time before answering. "Because we understand what happens when aggressive species are not stopped. Our own history is full of conquest and war. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we reached the stars." She picked up a small stone and skipped it across the water. "When we first encountered other species, we realized that the galaxy was full of civilizations like we used to be. Empires that grew through conquest, that saw other sapient beings as resources to be exploited. So you decided to stop them." "We decided to become something better," Chen said. "We made ourselves into what the galaxy needed, a species willing to make the hard choices that peaceful civilizations cannot make." "And what gives you the right to make those choices?" Chen turned to look at him directly. "The same thing that gave your empire the right to conquer 47 other species. The ability to do it and the will to see it through." Kethvar felt a chill. "You are no different from us, then. You rule through strength." "No," Chen said firmly. "We are very different. Your empire conquered to gain resources and territory. We act to protect the innocent. Your people enslaved other species. We give defeated civilizations the chance to rebuild as peaceful societies." She gestured toward the farming community where Zephyrian children played happily in the sun. "Your children will grow up knowing peace. They will never learn to build weapons of war or dream of conquering other worlds. In 3 generations, your species will be truly peaceful. And if we are not, then we will intervene again," Chen said simply. "But that will not be necessary. It never is. Once a species experiences true peace, they rarely choose to give it up for war." As they walked back toward the settlement, Kethvar saw a group of human technicians working on some kind of monitoring equipment. They were polite and respectful to the Zephyrian farmers, but their presence was a constant reminder that this peaceful world existed only as long as humanity allowed it. "Admiral," he said, "may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever feel guilt for what you do? For destroying entire civilizations?" Chen stopped walking and considered the question carefully. "Every day," she admitted. "But I also remember the species that your empire enslaved, the billions of beings who died in your conquest wars, the children who never had the chance to grow up because your people decided their worlds were more valuable than their lives." She looked directly at him. "I feel guilt for destroying your empire, but I would feel far more guilt if I had allowed it to continue existing. They reached the edge of the settlement, where a group of former Zephyrian officers was building a new school for the children. These beings who had once commanded starships were now carpenters and teachers, finding purpose in creation rather than destruction. "There is something else you should know," Chen said. "Your empire was not the first to threaten human space, and it will not be the last. Even as we speak, our monitoring stations have detected another aggressive species beginning to expand toward peaceful worlds. What will you do? The same thing we always do. We will send warning beacons first. We will give them the chance to choose a different path. Most aggressive species ignore the warnings." Chen walked toward her transport ship, which waited at the edge of the settlement. "In a few weeks, new warning beacons will be deployed around that species' territory. The message will be the same as always. No one enters human space uninvited. Unless they don't plan to come back. And if they ignore the warnings, then they will join you here," Chen said. "Or they will cease to exist entirely. Their choice." As her ship lifted off, Kethvar stood in the field watching it disappear into the sky. Around him, his people worked and laughed and lived in peace. They had lost an empire but gained something more valuable, the chance to be better than they had been. In the distance, he could see the monitoring station that ensured they would never again have the technology to threaten other worlds. It was a prison, but it was also a protection. Protection from their own worst instincts. And somewhere in the galaxy, another aggressive species was about to discover what happened when they ignored humanity's warnings. The cycle would continue, as it had for over a century, until the galaxy was finally safe for all sapient life. Kethvar picked up a farming tool and returned to his work. The former admiral of a mighty star empire was now a simple farmer. And for the first time in his life, he was truly at peace. Behind him, the human monitoring station transmitted its daily report back to Earth. New Zephyr colony stable. Population adapting well to peaceful life. No signs of aggressive behavior. Recommend continued monitoring for another generation. The Darwin Protocol continued its work, one species at a time, until the galaxy would know only peace.